This is a show with no particular niche, baby. It's always about hanging out. Maybe we'll laugh at some stuff, maybe we'll learn something new, but it's always about hanging out, me and you. Hi, hello, and welcome, or welcome back to That Thing with James, a podcast about nothing in particular. I'm your host, James. Hey, thanks for tuning in, and to those of you who are not new to the show, thanks for coming back. Today, we are picking up where I left off in the last free episode. We'll be getting into, let's see, what is this? I think chapter 3 of Murder by the Notebook, a fan fiction crossover between two fandoms I'm a part of, Death Note and Columbo. Quick recap on the story. Very quick recap. Hopefully this isn't too big of a spoiler. This really would be best if you've seen both Death Note and Columbo. Really, if you've only seen one, I would say it would be best if you've at least seen Death Note, but it's not necessary for you to have seen or be familiar with either of these things. The story picks up, this fan fiction picks up about halfway, circumstantially halfway into Death Note. So a certain character has achieved certain things, and there's an investigation task force trying to figure out who Kira is. Kira is this person who has hold of a Death Note, or a notebook owned by a god of death, aka Shinigami. That's the Japanese word for god of death, or like death demon type thing. There are multiple Shinigami, multiple gods or beings of death, and they all have a notebook. And if they write your name while keeping your face in mind into the notebook, you will die within like 30 seconds. Your heart will just stop unless otherwise noted in the Death Note. You can write down cause and circumstances that lead to the death, but it has to, take place within like a span of 7 minutes or something like that. So you can almost control a person's actions, but not completely. The show gets into that, but that's all you need to know so far. There's a character named Light Yagami, or as the Japanese will say the family name first, and that's how it's written in this story. So it would be Yagami Light. His pseudonym is Kira, Kira, and he wants to be basically the living god of a new world order where he has final say on justice. Judge, jury, and executioner. It begins and stops with Light, with Kira. But Light is currently on an investigation task force who are trying to figure out who Kira is. Of course, he's trying to investigate himself, but he's inside, and he's trying to lead them astray as much as he can to cover his own tracks so they don't find out the killer is inside the house. The call is coming from inside. Now, a member of the task force has left the task force, and replacing that member is a detective from Los Angeles who came to Tokyo to help out with this task force. This new investigator from Los Angeles, sent by like Interpol or something, is none other than Lieutenant Columbo. Homicide LAPD Lieutenant Columbo is stepping in, and that's all you really need to know. I do recommend you at least go back and watch the previous free episode if you're really interested in, catching up on the story. If not, it's okay. I'm going to be reading it and doing voices for the different characters. So there's that. Now, before we get into it, real quick, I have a Patreon for this show, patreon.com/thatthingwithjames. patreon.com/ThatThingWithJames. There you can get the peace of mind that comes along with helping to support a show like mine, independent, ad-free show. So your contributions go a very long way and are greatly appreciated by me. I'm the guy. This show starts and stops with me in terms of production. It's all me, baby. And to those of you who are already patrons, thank you so much. You rock. $5 gets you, that's the bare minimum entry, will get you 30 days of access, 30 days of access to all 120 plus bonus episodes. Yeah, this week a bonus episode 121 is coming out. So if you're seeing and or hearing me saying these words right now, that means the 121st episode is also available at patreon.com/thatthingwithjames. Go ahead, become a patron. That link you can find written in the episode description, along with the links to my show email, my show subreddit, and my social handles. Check out the description there for those links. Let me get a sip of water. Let me wet my whistle, do a couple vocal warm-ups, and we will jump into Chapter 3 of Murder by the Notebook. Just a second. Chapter 3, Parable of the Magician. Day 6, 5 a.m. Lieutenant Columbo jerked awake at his desk, blinking away the harsh city light streaming through the office window. He struggled to think of it as his office at all, as he kept finding stashes of hard candy and chocolate in the drawers. Nevertheless, it served its purpose, and he had some very interesting data on the backs of his shoes. Nothing substantial, and hardly worth being called evidence at all. But what it did offer was insight. For all Light's talk of being swamped with lead investigator paperwork, he never seemed to actually have anything to show for all his time spent in his own office. It was a small confirmation, but it lined up with Columbo's theory, and that was all that mattered. Light wouldn't be in until around 9. This much he knew. Like most of the upper-class killers he'd encountered, Light was punctual enough to set a watch by. Every day for the past 4 days, Columbo had arrived anywhere between 8 and 8:30 in the morning, giving himself sufficient time to account for any traffic in his cab ride. Light, on the other hand, always seemed to set foot in the door the very instant 8:59 gave way to 9 o'clock. He'd checked the mail outside, come in to distribute it as needed, then promptly make his way to his office. His overcompensatory attempts to appear ordinary and nonchalant made him predictable, and the aged lieutenant was hoping to use it against him. In the meantime, he decided to use his 4-hour head start to do some analysis work he'd been putting off. He needed the main computer's screen to see the scans of the notebook, and he preferred to do so without any prying eyes. 5:30 a.m. Columbo rubbed his temples in exasperation as he stared at the image with his good eye. Oh, by the way, Peter Falk, the guy who played Columbo, this is not the writing. This is side note from me. I also haven't read this yet, so if I stumble, sorry, I've not practiced. The actor, Peter Falk, he had only one eye and then one glass eye. So he always has like a squinty eye. That's his glass eye, by the way. Anyway, here we go. 5:30 a.m. Columbo rubbed his temples in exasperation as he stared at the image with his good eye. He'd been hoping to do a handwriting comparison with Misa Amane. Alas, it was a dead end, and for no reason he would have liked. In spite of his reputation, he was not infallible. He had amassed a great many tricks to keep up his sleeve over the course of his morbid career, but he still had limitations. And the simple fact of the matter was that he could not, for the life of him, read Japanese characters. He had hoped that it wouldn't be too much of a problem. After all he needed to do was compare the notebook's scans to any of the numerous examples they had of Misa's handwriting. But be it written statements or screened letters she sent to fans, and yet the characters could have lined up like seamless puzzle pieces, and he wouldn't have been able to tell, simply because the digital scans of the notebook's pages were difficult for him to see in focus. In his experience, no matter how high resolution a digital image was, he'd always get hung up in the little imperfections of wayward pixels. It was his earnest opinion that the world was trying to switch to digital way too fast, and the technology just wasn't ready yet. Film was reliable. It captured every detail, whether you wanted it or not. Having only one eye had never prevented him from doing his job in the past, but now he had a splitting headache and an empty stomach. He tried to remember the last time he'd eaten a proper meal that wasn't just street food or microwave taiyaki. Finally, he called time of death on the handwriting angle and cleared out the the computer's task manager just to be safe, then got up to visit the break room. 6:56 a.m. When Ryuzaki had been in charge of the Kira investigation, the break room had been fully stocked at all times. Snacks, drinks, electrolyte supplements, vitamins, frozen dinners, home-cooked dinners in meal-planned Tupperware containers, and a variety of sweets and pastries had filled the fridge and pantry. Now, 3 months later, there was no more than a few frozen dinners and a coffee pot. Maybe there was some more stuff in the pantry, but he hadn't bothered to check. He was content reading his paperback in the rays of dawn pouring through the window, picking at his food and sipping his coffee. He had even finally managed to silence the thousands of pesky thoughts about the case and fully immerse himself in the romantic tension between the jaded veteran and the rec center coach when someone suddenly turned on the break room light. He jumped so hard he fell out of his chair, his coffee mug tossed behind him to shatter against the wall. "Oh," he heard as he gathered himself off the floor. "Columbo-san, forgive me. I didn't know anyone else was here." "Ah, gee, it's no big deal," he hurriedly spat out. "I'm sorry about the mess. It was then that he looked up to see Soichiro Yagami and the state he was in. The detective superintendent looked like a body that had been discovered in the river and smelled even worse. Sweat had glued his once sharp dress shirt to his chest and armpits. His hair was matted, a greasy mess, with his facial hair being especially rough. He smelled like a walking hangover, like mouthwash attempting to hide the stench of whiskey. Worst of all was his eyes. If he had been photographed against the wall, Columbo knew he would have assumed he was a corpse lying on the floor. Something was gone, and it wasn't coming back. "Mr. Yagami, are you, feeling all right?" he asked as he stood up. "I slept here last night," he replied. "I've spent quite a few nights here lately, detective. I can't look my wife in the eye anymore." The fumes of liquor and restless sleep tore at Columbo's senses. "Sir?" he asked, doing his best to sound polite. "Have you been drinking?" The broken man opened his mouth as if to answer, but nothing came out before he closed it again. Finally, he sighed and took a seat in one of the recliners, prompting Columbo to join him. "It's my boy, isn't it?" he asked flatly. "You're here because my son is Kira. Or at least you think he is." Mr. Yagami, I'm following every lead I got, and I'm looking into any and all paws. Please, just tell me why. Why what, sir? Why have two outside consultants, both with careers and records that outshined anything I've seen, worked so tirelessly to convict my son of mass murder? The question hadn't been accusatory. He was desperately waiting for an answer. Columbo sighed and ran his fingers through his hair. Until I have something solid to stick on him, it's just a gut feeling. A gut feeling, the boy's father repeated, letting each syllable swirl around in his mouth. It's nothing personal, sir. It's just there's always little things, little patterns I can recognize. I've been doing this a long time, you see. I can't help it. Things just stick out. Like what? Pompousness, for one thing. Columbo leaned forward and softened his tone. No matter how hard he tries to mask it, he just can't contain himself. He smacked the back of his left hand to his right palm with each pause. First day I was here, when you introduced me to the team, that was the saddest room of fellas I had ever seen in my life. You looked defeated, faded behind the eyes, you know. And who could blame you? A year-long case with dozens dying per day, it's enough to break any man. Hell, I started telling jokes about work back home just to try and liven things up a little. He cleared his throat and focused his good eye on Soichiro before continuing. And then, here comes this kid, out of the back offices, spring in his step and a song in his heart. Sure, he had a little slump to his shoulders and he was talking all dour and whatnot, but his hair is clean. His face is shaved. His suit is pressed. I mean, he's looking like it's picture day at the precinct and he's got a hot date after. And he's the only one in the building like that. And his eyes, they're full of life. But something else too. I don't know what, but it grabs me. It felt like a spider contemplating the nutritional value of a fly in its web. That's when I knew. Soichiro looked at him gravely, slowly shaking his head. There's no evidence in that, he whispered hoarsely. No, but you know the feeling I'm talking about, don't you? A nod. Yes, I do. I just want to know why I couldn't see it sooner. Why didn't I have those gut feelings? Columbo leaned back and produced a cigar and lighter from his inner coat pocket. Do you mind? He asked. When he had permission, he cut the tip of the cigar and lit it. He took a few puffs, smacked his lips, and looked back at Soichiro. While back, he began, I was looking into a snazzy club owner who got shot. He was in his own office with a super fancy something other lock, but there's no sign of forced entry on the door. It was one of those stumpers, you know? Anyway, turns out that it was the club owner's money-making star attraction, some supposedly Italian magician with blonde hair and a strange, unplaceable accent. He had a daughter, too, this delightful young woman who was nothing less than one of the kindest people I ever met. And I had to tell her who her father really was, as well as what he'd done. Why did he do it? That's the thing I'm getting to. He was a Nazi, a genuine... Side note, this is an actual episode from Columbo. This is an actual episode, and I'm so glad that the writer's working this in. Okay, here we go. That's the thing I'm getting to. He was a Nazi, a genuine, bona fide war criminal on the lam using his new name, parading around the country as a fancy magician because he just can't help himself, because he needs to fuel his ego. Come to find out, his manager discovered his secret and tried blackmailing him, and it went about as well as you'd expect. But the important thing, what I'm trying to say, is I told his daughter, and she asked me the same question. Why didn't I see it? How could I miss it? And this is his daughter we're talking about. She'd known him literally her whole life, but she never once suspected her father was secretly a monster. He took another puff. See, it ain't your fault that you don't see when you're not looking for it. You know your son just as that, your son. You don't know him as his classmates know him. You don't know him as his fiancée knows him. You damn sure don't know him as he knows himself. You can't blame yourself for not seeing the mask, because the whole point of masks is to hide in plain sight. Silence. Everything hung between them in thick smoke. Finally, Soichiro spoke. He went so far to convince me. He even let me threaten to shoot him. What drives a man to such extremes? Honestly, some kids hid the injustices of adult life, and it's too much. They see one movie about frontier justice or read one comic book about vigilante killers, and suddenly they think they're the first person ever to come up with the idea of, let's just kill all the bad guys. Forgive me if I sound insensitive, but I think your son's just the first to actually do something more than vent in a journal about it. 9 a.m. There he was, right on time. Columbo watched his target on the camera feed as he entered the building and checked the mail. This time, he noticed something he had previously ignored. Instead of immediately heading inside with the mail in his hand, Light was meticulously checking each envelope. For what? Columbo did not know. Frankly, it was more than a little off-putting to see him hungrily pore over every scrap of mail without opening it. Suddenly, he had an idea. All right, Chapter 4 coming up, but first, I need to wet my whistle again. Just a second. All right, it looks like we're just a few chapters away from the end, and I feel like finishing this thing out. So let's get on with Chapter 4, Nibbled by a Duck. The days were getting shorter. Light felt like he had barely had time to think more than 5 minutes before it was time to leave the office and go home. He was no closer to learning that idiot's name than he had been after the fight with Misa 4 days ago. Try as he might to... excuse me, he didn't burp. Try as he might to keep his appearances up, things were starting to get to him. He hadn't even used the note in 3 days, devoting all his energy to his scavenger hunt for clues. It was twice as cumbersome since everyone knew how the note worked now. Nobody slipped up with their actual name, least of all the American. He had hoped a little over a week ago that he might make such a mistake without even realizing it, and yet the detective had set him back on his heels time and time again in spite of his bumbling antics. None of this would be a problem if she'd just told him the damn name. The bitter thought gave him pause, not for the first time. He kept revisiting that afternoon in excruciating detail, trying to catch whatever it was that he'd missed. Had Columbo given her some secret code? A nod or a wink he'd missed? A single gesture said, "I know it was both of you, but I'll let you go free as a bird if you don't tell him my name with your Shinigami eyes." The idea sounded ludicrous, but so did the idea that his loyal partner of over a year had suddenly decided to abandon him. It was out of character for her to be so selfish, so childishly stubborn. He had yelled through the door for what felt like hours, demanding she open up until his voice went hoarse, but she hadn't made so much as a whimper of a noise. He'd slept on the couch that night like a common pet, and it had sickened him. The next day, after he left for work, she had packed 3 suitcases and left. He had no idea where she was, though he was fairly certain she had sought sanctuary in a hotel somewhere. Typical. She was probably racking up an exorbitant room service bill with his money. Room service bill with his money. It was the last straw for him. It was bad enough listening to Ryuk snicker every time Columbo showed his face, or watching his father spiral into whatever menial shit was eating at him, but it was her betrayal that angered him the most. As a migraine began to drill its way into his skull through his eyes, he paced around his office, scheming and plotting for a way to get rid of her once and for all without raising any suspicions. If you're gonna... I gotta get my voice right. If you're gonna make her off herself on a delay, Ryuk piped up in a sing-song from the couch, you do well to remember the 23-day rule. If the Italian stallion's still on a hot streak, then he'll peg you for it immediately. He curled up in a fit of laughter, kicking his legs in the air. Will you stop that? Light snapped, whipping around to glare at him. How long have you been able to read my thoughts? Ryuk's laughter halted abruptly as he turned his head to look at Light. He stood up, his smile fading as much as it could. Light was suddenly reminded of just how tall the Ancient One actually was. I don't have to read your mind to see how cornered you are, human, he snarled, spitting out the final word with disdain. You've gotten boring as of late, and that gumshoe is all that's keeping this fun for me. Before Light could think of a retort, there was a knock at the door. Mr. Yagami? Came a familiar husky voice. God fucking damn it, of course it's fucking him. Who the fuck else would it be? Light screamed internally with his teeth clenched. The moment passed. He sighed and then composed himself before opening the door. Detective? He implored dryly. Hey, yeah, I was just, hey, who were you talking to? The cause of his migraine asked. Columbo, you've caught me at a rather tumultuous time, I'm afraid, he sighed, and decided to play up his tired appearance. If you must know, for the sake of your eavesdropping curiosity, I was on the phone with my fiancée. Things haven't been great lately. And I think she's about to leave me because of the long hours I'm working on this case. Late hours? I don't mean to be pedantic or nothing, but you tend to leave along with everyone else at the end of the day. The migraine pulsed harder. I have a study at home, Lieutenant. Do you intend to keep badgering me at the doorway, or was there something you wanted? And can we do it another time? Oh, of course. Sorry about all that. You okay? I mean, God knows, my wife and I had our rough patches when we were young, too. If it makes you feel any better, the fact that she's still talking to you at all means she wants to work things out. But you just gotta listen. Columbo glanced over Light's shoulder to see his clean desk behind him. Anyway, I just wanted to talk to you about something weird I noticed on the scans in the notebook. And I wish I could wait, but I think you'll want to see this too. Light studied his opponent as he gave his answer. Of course I do. I could use the distraction. They were sat at one of the tables in the main common area when Columbo pulled out two printouts, his brow furrowed as he studied them. One was the inside of the Death Note's front cover, the other showed the inside of the back. Aren't the names written in the pages more important? Light asked dismissively. If they were going to give us anything, they would have by now, Columbo replied without looking up. Besides, it's the rules I'm interested in. Not just what they say, but how they look. They're not written on the cover, they're etched, carved, you could say. And here's where it gets interesting. He pointed to a printout on the front covers inside. You see the first one? The etching into the material? It's so worn, so faded, probably centuries of soot and grime baked into the letters. He then drew Light's attention to the second page. Now, look over here, he continued. You see that? How the letters look cleaner? I mean, yeah, they're faded a tad, stained too, but it's inconsistent. I'm afraid I don't follow, Light uttered in monotone. Well, it reminds me of these counterfeits I booked years ago, before I was even homicide, Columbo replied. His tone softened in a way that it always did before he told a story from his career. See, they'd always split the bill. They'd always spill a little bit of really watered down coffee on their bills. Not enough to completely dye them, mind, but enough to change their texture and make them look dirty. That way, they looked like they had been in circulation a while to anyone who wasn't looking too closely. Detective, I'm patiently waiting for you to make your point, but I have a lot on my mind right now. What, you don't see it? I think these etchings are new. As in, they were put in just a few days or so before the scan was made. You see, Ryuzaki was testing out these rules, right? I got to thinking, why that specific rule? Why test them at all? Why is he thinking one of them isn't real? So I started looking at the letters, really looking at them, and that's when I noticed the difference. He leaned forward, his good eye peering directly into Light's. Mr. Yagami, I think that's why Ryuzaki was murdered. Because you see, these two rules here, they're awful convenient, aren't they? One makes it easy to fabricate an alibi. The other prevents anyone from destroying the murder weapon, probably so Kira could reclaim the notebook at a later time. But I think they're fake. And I think Ryuzaki was about to blow the whole thing open. Someone didn't like that, and I'm trying to figure out who. What's your input? Light glared back. His elbow was on the table, his fist propping his chin. It's quite a theory, Lieutenant, he muttered. Are you prepared to stake the case on a digital scan? Are you sure it's not just bad lighting, a coloration glitch in the machine when it's scanned? Well, no, I guess I can't knock that argument completely, Columbo replied. Not without the actual note itself, but that thing's long gone, apparently. Disappeared right around the time that Shinigami did, right? As far as we know, yes. Maybe, Columbo stroked his chin in contemplation. Maybe the very idea of testing the limits of the note itself was reckless. Honestly, you don't want to play around with powers like that. What do you mean? Well, I figured the Shinigami in question, Rem, was it? If the book wasn't tampered with, then it sounds like she didn't take too kindly to her property being played with. I mean, if the rules are real and Kira wasn't afraid of being exposed, he had no reason to kill Ryuzaki right then, right? Which means Rem was the only one with any possible motive. And I think she didn't like her book being used in petty science experiments. You get what I mean? Light was doing everything he could to keep his composure. The fission reactor that was his temper was approaching critical mass as he realized what Columbo was implying. He had no choice but to let the man continue. Can you even imagine? This whole time, Kira's been biding his time with Ryuzaki, trying to find a way to take him down, and the poor guy gets done in by a supernatural third party. Do you think Kira found a way to kill Rem as revenge for taking his glory? Shinigami can't be killed by humans, Light blurted out before he could stop himself. The detective cocked an eyebrow. It's something she told us before it happened. They don't like to interfere either. Have you considered that perhaps Kira was just a disgusting sense of showmanship? Has a disgusting sense of showmanship? He saved the ace up his sleeve for a dramatic moment, perhaps. Perhaps he's done it before. Ah, yeah, that does make more sense, doesn't it? Columbo nodded and smiled, never breaking eye contact. Occam's razor and all, right? Sorry, I just get so caught up in tiny details sometimes it's easy to miss the bigger picture. Well, that dries it up, really makes it Really makes you think, don't it? Uh, about what else is out there, you know? What else? Light repeated as he finally blinked the dryness out of his eyes, rubbing them with his thumb and forefinger. Well, you don't think it's just death gods out there, do you? Columbo laughed. I mean, if these characters are real, are aliens? Forest spirits? Crying out loud, does the existence of a god of death not imply the existence of a god of life? He was speaking slower, trying to drive his point home, but his conversation partner wasn't having it. Tell you what, Lieutenant, Light mused, standing up from the table. When we find Kira, put him in the chair, and close the book on this case, I will happily search for aliens and dryads. Would you like that? For now, however, I have work to do, okay? The stout detective waved after him, wearing a smile that seemed oblivious to his jabs. I'll hold you to it, he called after him. Then to himself, he followed with, You bet your ass I will. It was well past 9 in the evening, and Lieutenant Columbo was hard at work brushing his teeth when he heard a knock at his door. He had shed his work attire in exchange for a nice pair of pajama bottoms and a faded tank top. Said shirt was on the verge of discomfort after shrinking in the wash. He had completely guessworked the hotel's laundromat and reconciled that it could have gone much worse, all considered. He spat out the foamy toothpaste and made his way to the door, toothbrush still in hand. The last person he ever would have expected stood in the hall when he opened it. What? Miss Amane? He stammered in shock. What are you... Here, quick, get inside. Long gone was the gothic Lolita fashion that colored her every outfit. The doll-like makeup he'd seen on so many posters was gone. Even during his drop-in visit, she had worn, at the very least, a healthy amount of foundation and blush, and her hair had been expensively permed. Now, she looked like she'd just gotten off a double shift as a nurse. Her hair was tied back in the messiest bun he'd ever seen. Her bangs covered her eyes, but not enough to hide the hollow, dull pain behind them. She wore sweatpants and a hoodie, most likely doing her best to hide. How long had she been hiding, and why? He was urgently beckoning for her to enter. She was having a hard time finding the strength. After what felt like an eternity, she finally said, I just need a place to stay. Hold on, I'm fucking up trying to find the voice. I just need a place to stay until it's over. Is that okay? He nodded, and she finally stepped through the threshold, closing the door behind her. Now, I said I was going to finish this out, but these are going longer than I anticipated. So what's going to happen is the same thing that happened last time. We're going to pause the story right now, and I'll pick up where we left off in the next free episode. I'm not going to rob you of this story and my fine voice acting, juggling between various characters. I'm having fun with this, man. And I want you to stick around for it. So that's it for this episode. Yeah, another cliffhanger. That's it for this episode. Stick around for the bonus episode. You can get that at patreon.com/ThatThingWithJames. Link is in the episode description. Thank you to those who are already patrons. And even if you're not a patron, thanks for tuning in. You're cool. Thanks for hanging out. This has been fun. And I hope you're looking forward to the conclusion, the final 2 chapters of this story, because I sure as hell am. Well, I hope to see you soon. Bye.